There we go. 1, 2, 3. Oh, that was better, wasn't it? Back again. This time we're up for another book review because I know I promised that I'd do those in sequence. I think next will be a film review because I only have one up even though it says 2. Gotta love YouTube. But this time I want to talk about a book. I first heard about this on the podcast Backlisted, which I'll link to if you do not know about Backlisted and you love books and reading. I would highly recommend it. Very incredible podcast. I've found a number of great books through their discussions, and they're very intelligent discussions. It's normally people who have written for London Review of Books. It's the publisher behind Unbound. Yeah, just go check it out if you have an interest. If not, who can, no shame. Anyway, you notice in the background, we still have Hilary up. I think he goes away very shortly, so I figured I'd give him one more chance. And behind me, Metal Cat Solid, another Christmas present because I've been wanting a Lucky Cat for a while. But he kind of looks like he has black metal markings, so he became Metal Cat Solid. And he is angry at Kathleen because she will not provide him cardboard boxes with which he can sneak around guards. Heads will recognize. Anyways, I dithered too long. The book in question that I want to talk about is by Hilary Mantel. If you're unaware, Hilary Mantel is most famous for, it's either called the Wolf Hall Trilogy or the Thomas Cromwell Trilogy, which consists of the books Wolf Hall, Bringing Up the Bodies, and The Mirror of the Light, which are amazing historical fiction. And this is the interesting thing that I find about the book we're going to talk about, which is it's not as well known and it's not as well received because of the subject matter. And that book, if you know Hilary Mantel, you probably already guessed it, is the 2005 novel Beyond Black. Now, when I decide to do reviews, I'll do some research to see whether they've been covered a lot. And if so, other people do much better jobs than my gimp ass ever will. So I want to bring the more obscure works to you so that, ones that I really enjoyed and I feel need a brighter light shed upon them. And Beyond Black definitively belongs within that category. The thing I find interesting, I'm 52, so I've been reading for a long frickin' time. I was an avid reader as a child, and that has continued all the way up through my life. And that entire time, probably from my 20s on, because you really become aware of such things, I have heard that it is time for the death of literary fiction. Nobody reads literary fiction anymore, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, I'm almost 52. It's still going strong. I don't think it's going anywhere. I do believe Alan Moore had a very good point when he said he started writing his works of literary fiction because they are now an often ignored area, much as he began with comics. People weren't really paying attention to comics. His Watchmen series kind of brought the graphic novel form into existence, and so now he's doing literary fiction because there's not as much scrutiny on that area. And I think it's Rudy Rucker who said, the edges of anything are where the most interesting happenings occur, where the gnarl, I think he referred to it as. And I think this is a very true thing. Now, the reason Beyond Black is not as well received as the historical fiction works of Hilary Mantel has to do with the subject matter, as I said earlier, and that is spiritualism. And she also takes a very human approach to spiritualism. I hate it when reviewers insert themselves, but previously I was a magician. I've worked with several psychics, doing shows, opening for them, yada, yada, yada. Both open and shut eyes, which is a very reductionist term that magicians use in order to refer to psychics. And what struck me about this is Hilary Mantel's descriptions of her mediums' performances in these small lodging houses halls in the suburbs of London, rang very true to what I've actually seen professional psychics in an auditorium setting do. And if you've only seen the TV ones, it's a much different character and beast. If you're performing live, you obviously have to be on your toes. You have to be able to filter things through, and Hilary Mantel captures this very wonderfully. So I do not want to give any spoilers away, but, just to give you the basic idea of how this novel is structured and how it occurs. The main character is Allison, who is a middle-aged, extremely sweet, I think she's described as a size 22 on a good day, which also fits in my experience. And she is a professional medium. And as she says in the course of the novel, they don't call you mad if you make a living at it. Which, it's true. We live in a capitalist society. Man, that's such a cliche nowadays, isn't it? But it is true. And Allison won't perform in London. She performs in the suburbs around London, which are described. The landscape in this novel is definitely a character in its own right, and it is a very unsettling character because Mantel is good at conveying dread. At the same time, she maintains sardonic is not a word that you hear often, and she is a very sardonic writer. She has a very black sense of humor that will creep up, and that's part of what makes this book so charming. So I want to give you a very brief snippet of some of her prose stylings. So what we'll do, I'll have Kathleen read a section, because trust me, her voice is much better than mine. I told you I was punching way above my weight class with that woman. But I'll have her read like 2 to 3 sentences, just a description of the landscape, give you a taste of what it is. And while that's going on, so you don't have to look at my ugly mug, I'll just show you the various book covers that I've seen for Beyond Black, because I always find it interesting how artists interpret a book. So let's cut to that, and then we'll come back.
There are citadels underground. There are potholes and sunken shafts. There are secret chambers in the hearts of men, sometimes of women too. There are unlicensed workings and laboratories underground. Mutants breeding in the tunnels. There are cannibal moo cows and toxic bunnykins. And behind the drawn curtains of hospital wards, there are bugs that eat the flesh.
I told you she had a much better voice than I did. So yes, the novel starts off. The medium Allison is traveling amongst these suburbs outside of London, performing in various clubs and function halls for the audiences. And the interesting thing about her performances are she's a very sweet woman, as I said before, and the messages that she receives aren't necessarily the ones that she will give to the audience, because, as Mantel makes very clear, the dead, just because they have died and passed on, do not magically become saints. They carry their past with them into the afterlife. And they like to play tricks sometimes, and she has to kind of filter out the nonsense, the noise, and the maliciousness to the real message. It'd be a signal to noise ratio if you get that engineering bent to you. So Allison she's making a living, but she's just kind of muddling along. The other character that's central to this book is Colette, who is a young woman who's very good at her job as an events organizer, but she's at a dead end in a relationship. She feels at the end of what she can accomplish in her current job. And one night, out of curiosity, she checks out one of Allison's readings, becomes intrigued, but she's very skeptical of the whole proceedings. So she makes a deal with Allison that she will become her friend, assistant, manager, if you will, and take care of the business side of things while Allison takes care of the performance. Performances, I guess, are a good word for it. Okay. Because Mantel doesn't play this off as fraudulent. I don't think that's spoiling anything in there. Part of what makes this novel so amazing is trying to figure out what's real, what is fantastical and where that line actually blurs. The third character that you will find in this book is Morris, who is Allison's spirit guide. And she knew Morris before he passed over. And Morris is almost a bridge to Allison's past, because Allison grew up in a town called Aldershot, which I had to look up because, I'm a Yank. I don't know these towns. I have not been to the UK that often, but it doesn't look like that great of a town. And the entire time she lived there, her mother, while she was growing up, was a prostitute and may have seen dead people herself. And their apartment was constantly flooded with men who were basically thieves, and up to probably more sinister happenings. And Allison has repressed a lot of this. And this trauma plays upon her present, especially through her spirit guide, Morris, who, it's kind of funny that Mantel lets Allison be tawdry, and she bemoans the fact that Morris isn't a nice spirit guide, he's not like named Running Deer or a Persian prince or something, He's a shabby petty thief with tattered clothing that's constantly playing with himself when she's the only one that can see him. Or if she attempts to get another job, he'll throw stuff around. So basically, he's a dick, okay? So the novel chronicles the relationship of Allison to her past, Colette to Allison, and them making their way through this decaying world, which I don't think we've quite seen since Graham Greene's earlier novels, but, there's probably people out there are working in this. But it seems as if with the rise of the popularity of folk horror, everybody wants to return to the pastoral within Britain, and this seems to strike true. At least, I know I'm projecting from an American viewpoint, but our rural areas are kind of going to the rather quickly around here. So I doubt it's different anyplace else in the world. There are some beautiful scenes in the book. One that was particularly haunting to me was this takes place during the 90s, I believe, because Princess Di is killed in an accident. And Allison and all of her psychic friends know about it before the news ever comes, which is the first time that doubt creeps into Colette's mind that this may all be true. And there's a wonderful scene where Princess Di, who is known to visit psychics and mediums, appears to Allison, and she doesn't know what has happened, which I guess is common within this book. This is common. She's not quite sure what happened. She actually believes she may be in a hospital or somewhere else. She's confused, but she's trying to relay messages, but she's struggling through this confusion, and she has press clippings of her pinned to the hem of her disheveled and dirty dress. And it's just such a haunting image. It was really well done, and I'm not even really like a huge Princess Di fan, but I thought that was just such a wonderful scene. And the book is full of such scenes, and I loved it because on the unlisted or backlisted podcast, one of the women that was on there, I think she was the reviewer for London Review Books, she goes, "This book splits audiences in half, those who like it and those who are wrong," which is why I wore my new t-shirt from the Bat Conservatory that I talked to you about with my last process video. This was one of my Christmas gifts. More money going to the conservation of bats, and either you love bats or you are wrong. But yeah, so hopefully I didn't want to give away too many plot points. I wanted to give you just enough to kind of tease it out for you, maybe spark some interest if you have not looked into this book. If you look up Hilary Mantel, you're going to find lots of discussions about Wolf Hall, bringing up the body, smear in the light, that Wolf Hall or Thomas Cromwell trilogy. I think there was one video on this book made about 10 years ago. So I was like, okay, time to actually do it. Now, I would have a suggestion for you. If you're going to read this book, I'd highly recommend Mantel's memoir at the same time, Giving Up the Ghost. because they kind of bookend each other very well. They complement each other, and one is just as haunting as the other. And the thing that I love about Beyond Black is it's one of those books that lives in your mind after you finished reading it. It is not ham-fisted in its symbolism, and you kind of make the connections yourself after you finished reading it, and you're thinking about it, and you're like, oh, this parallels this, and this was going on. Her writing on landscape, I think nature writers can get much too twee. Her writing about landscape, trying to escape past trauma, and just the power within human relationships makes it a very brilliant read. And I actually I was going to do this review earlier, but I sent this book as a gift. So yeah, I didn't want to ruin it for the person. So I hope she's enjoying the book right now. Hope I haven't spoiled it for her. Hope I haven't spoiled it for you. And I really hope that you give this book a chance because it's a wonderful novel. So that's it. Love you guys. Take care. Bye.